So, does the baby come out looking like the surrogate? That's the question that surrogates get almost every single day. That is right. Today we're going to answer that question, so buckle up. Welcome to That's Just Tara. This is Tara's mom, Melissa. Yeah, I said it right this time. Finally! Welcome to another episode of my series, IVF Infertility and Surrogacy. And today we're going to be touching the subject, how does surrogacy actually really work? Remember that this vlog is only for entertainment purposes only, no professional advice, no legal advice, no financial advice, no fertility advice, no mental health advice whatsoever. So this video is obviously going to cater more for the curious because most of the people that have become surrogates or intended parents already have investigated this subject in a very, very extensive manner. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill you guys in with what happens. I know that I don't need to explain myself, but some of you may wonder what's happening with my skin, and I think I have said it before, but maybe I did like a lot of months ago. The reason why my skin looks like this is because I have a condition called melasma. And melasma is not a congenital condition. It's just a condition that a lot of women have, and it's very common. And it comes about due to like sometimes hormonal imbalances, especially estrogen. So when the body produces a lot of estrogen, it just creates these little spots, especially on the face. Not these beautiful freckles though. These are natural from like the very beginning of times, you know. No, but yeah, it looks like, you know, like really dark patches. It's like kind of like weird, but that's okay, you know, it's not a big deal. If you are somebody that is an intended parent or a surrogate, I will include some important information here too, so that might actually be very, very useful for you as well. So surrogates are not selected at random. There's actually only around 1,000 surrogates that actually deliver every year. And from all the surrogates that apply, only around 5% get selected to start a journey, whether it ends up being trigger warning, live birth or not. Now, there's a large criteria, and agencies and clinics differ between when it comes to the requirements that they have. But some of the most important things is that the surrogate has to make sure that she does not hide or try to hide anything that has to do with high blood pressure history, things like C-sections, which obviously, you know, it can come out later, but also in case you have taken any emotional health medication, you cannot hide that stuff. In case you have had a past in drugs, for example, have had any delivery complications. So some of these things may be huge disqualifiers. Why? Because the journey is about to minimizing the risks for the baby and you. And if you try to hide any of those facts and later on it comes out as trouble comes up, you are going to be in huge legal trouble. So you have to be very careful with that. And not just huge legal trouble, you're going to have to end up paying back the intended parent the thousands and thousands of dollars, if not maybe more, from damages. Whether the surrogacy was made through an agency or through an independent match, or whether the surrogacy was done by a relative or a friend, there has to be a legal contract made, and each one of the parties have to have a fertility lawyer. And every contract averages around 30 pages that have to be well read. The lawyers go back and forth to see what works for them, for each of the parties. And you always have to be very careful, because what the contract says is what both the intended parents and the surrogates have to follow. And if somebody fails to one of those, it's breach of contract, obviously, and it can turn out into a huge mess. So it's very, very important that the surrogates and the intended parents are well aware that they have all their ducks in a row and their mindset in the right place before starting something so serious. And I have made a script for the psychological evaluation, because it doesn't matter if you are a relative or a friend, every clinic is going to require a psychological evaluation. And I have seen some cases where some clinics have bypassed it. I personally do not recommend it. Do not ever bypass a psychological evaluation, because it contains very, very important points that you as an intended parent will be protected with, just in case. So think about it. This is no legal advice. This vlog is only for entertainment purposes only, and I'm only saying my opinion. And don't worry, the video on the psychological evaluation, it's going to be coming up. I can't tell you exactly when, because we make different kinds of videos, but it will come one of these days soon. And I'm going to tell you how it is. I'm going to tell you like it is. So a lot of this information is connected to my playlist, IVF, Infertility and Surrogacy. You're going to be able to find that playlist at the end of the video in one of my end to call action little rectangles that you see. You will also find that playlist in the description in a link, and you will also find the link to my mystery playlist too, because I have a couple of projects that are connected to that mystery playlist, to these topics. So I really recommend that you follow that playlist very, very closely. So like I have said before, there are two types of surrogacy journeys, whether they are altruistic or compensated. The two types are gestational surrogacy and traditional surrogacy. And traditional surrogacy is very legally complicated, and it is all about when they are using the own eggs of the surrogate. So I am not knowledgeable on that topic, so I am not going to abound with that. But I will tell you that, but please don't think that it involves baby dance, because it doesn't. Okay? All right. So the gestational surrogacy, which is the most common form of surrogacy right now, is when just simply an embryo is formed by using the egg of the donor, which could be the biological intended mother or a regular donor from the outside. And why does sometimes a regular donor from outside has to be used? Well, because sometimes the biological intended mom has quality problems with her eggs, and after multiple attempts, they have decided to resort to an egg donor. And most likely, if not a relative by choice, it is somebody that they have found through an agency that is young and is very healthy and has been medically screened and all that jazz, right? Okay, so what happens is that the surrogate gets prepared, with her medical screening and all that. And medical screening, includes things like hysteroscopy, biopsies, ultrasounds, labs, very thorough. It's a very thorough screening, psychological evaluation, and so on. The list is a little bit endless, but it's all worth it. They have to make sure that they have the right candidate. Okay, so then once the surrogate has passed the screening, then they go to the, and sometimes that takes about 2 to 3 months. It all depends. They go through the legal process, and that process could take anywhere from like 4 to 6 weeks, which is about the part where the lawyers go back and forth, just trying to see what's best for everyone, just to have everybody be on the same page, And then after that is when the cycle, the real journey starts. That's when a potential surrogate is actually considered to be a surrogate. So there are different ways for a surrogate to start the journey, depending on what the reproductive endocrinologist says. So sometimes when they want to make sure that they synchronize everything well, they give birth control pills to the surrogate so that they can time well the moment that their cycle starts or what have you. I find that a little bit complicated. I think, in my opinion, it's just best to wait for the surrogate's next period to start. It just makes it a lot more easier, but that's just my opinion. So what happens is that once surrogate starts her period, she is given estrogen, and it could be in the form of tablets or injections. The reproductive endocrinologists, known also as fertility doctors, if you want the easy the easy phrase, usually they start with tablets, and if the tablets are not working, if they are not making the surrogate's uterus develop a nice, thick, fluffy lining, then they will resort to injections. So like little injections that they put on the belly. I think they're called subcutaneous injections, right? So usually it's 2 weeks, but they have to monitor it because sometimes the lining is not thick enough, and they'll just keep the surrogate for like maybe 1 or 2 more weeks to see where the lining gets to. No surrogacy journey is ever guaranteed. Even if the surrogate was already legally approved after all the medical screening, there are some times where the surrogate's body does not respond at all to medications. The surrogate body, something happens that the pregnancy just does not happen, and they have to break the match. And some surrogates might get disappointed because they think that, oh, I thought this was going to happen, guarantee, we signed contracts and everything. No, it's just your body needs to respond and your body needs to cooperate. If your body does not cooperate, it is not the fault of anybody. Not the fault of anybody. But the match has to be broken. So anyways, when the surrogate has finally gotten her lining to the right thickness level, and I have a lot of videos when it comes to that, so just look it up in the playlist. Usually the thickness that the fertility doctors prefer is at least a minimum of 7 mm. and they don't like to go, they usually don't like to go further than 12 to 14, because too much thickness is bad too. Too thin is bad and too much is bad. Remember, this is no medical advice. I'm not a medical expert. This is not an informational video. This is an entertainment vlog. Okay, guys? Just my opinion. Okay, so once I have reached the desired level, while all that happens, if it's not a fresh embryo transfer is when they synchronize both the cycles of the egg donor and the surrogate. Okay, but if it's a frozen embryo transfer, it's already embryos that were prepared and have been in storage for a little while, sometimes even 10 years, you know, because yeah, we have heard of stories like that. Okay, so now, before I continue with the rest, I am going to tell you exactly how they prepare those embryos. Okay, so they retrieve the eggs from the donor or the intended biological mother, and they froze them, and they also got a sample from the sperm from the sperm donor or the biological intended father. So what they do is that the professionals, you know, the embryologist, the fertility doctor, they all work as a team, and they put them in a little dish, right? They put them together, and they will be monitoring them with their microscope, and they're going to see how many sperms are able to fertilize those eggs. And sometimes some people can get as lucky as getting 6 embryos. So, you know, that's a lot, you know, or maybe, I don't know if more, but, you know, it's a very exciting moment for when that happens for somebody that has been wanting to have a biological child for so long, you know. So then what happens is the intended parents, or the intended parent, if it's going to be a single parent by choice, they have the option of testing those embryos. Mind you, I personally recommend that they get tested, because a lot of the surrogates that have been already well educated know that a low quality embryo or a mosaic embryo is very difficult to turn out viable, or to turn out into a live birth, because it could result in a pregnancy. But unfortunately, the pregnancy sometimes ends on for example, anywhere between the 10th to 20th week, unfortunately. And this is because the conditions were not detected, you know. So, but when those embryos are sent to the lab to get tested, they get tested for for their genetical information. Again, mind you, even when those embryos get tested, even if they are completely normal, there are life quality altering conditions that still might not pop up on those tests. Okay, so, but they always prepare the intended parents for that. It's hard to just take that into your soul if you're an intended parent, because you have all the hope and all the faith possible, and you know that those feelings are very valid, but you, at the same time, you have to stay realistic and understand that part. So let's say those tests come back normal, let's say, for example, right? And then I'm not sure if the embryologist may look at them before or after, but there is a point in which the embryologist looks at them to grade them. And many clinics have like a very organized way to grade them. Sometimes it includes a number and 2 letters, and sometimes it includes like 3 letters or something like that. But the universal one is like there's a number and 2 letters. So usually the letters are divided as A, B, C, stuff like that, right? If you have an embryo graded with A or A's or AB, that is a pretty good quality embryo, only as far as morphology goes, because this is completely separate from the lab test, from the genetical test. They want to also see what the appearance is, and the appearance is just really a beauty contest. It doesn't really give a lot of information, but it gives people a little bit more reassurance. And most of the time, those embryos that have been graded with A's and B's have been very successful. So I'm going to explain really quick how it goes. Sometimes when going back to the dish era, they leave sometimes those embryos after they get fertilized, they leave them cooking, just saying, for like 3 all the way to 6 days. So when they leave it up to 3 days, some people feel confident that it will be a viable pregnancy, but I personally would, if I was an intended parent or a surrogate, I wouldn't want to transfer a 3-day embryo, because in my opinion, you don't know if the embryo would survive 2 more days, So those embryos that have cooked at least for 5 days, it feels sometimes like it's just right. They were able to survive past those 3 days. So now they can feel like, they're stronger, like they can develop even more. So I don't know a lot about the medical implications when it comes to that, but I'm sharing with you guys to the best of my knowledge. Okay, so now that we know that this egg and this sperm came from 2 different individuals that have nothing to do with the surrogate, the moment that the surrogate has been already prepared, like for example, her lining is already ready, for the last week, the reproductive endocrinologist will prescribe progesterone. Most of the time, it is given in injections, like really long injections like that. The same thing as the IVF. And then after that, once those 5, 6, 7 days have passed, which where it's supposed to be, where like the surrogate has the window, the biggest fertility window. They assign her to go to the clinic to do the transfer. Mind you, I'm pretty sure you probably wonder, how do they know that's the right window? Well, sometimes the fertility doctors prefer to do a mock cycle, which is they prepare the surrogate with all the medications and everything, just as if she was going to transfer, but without actually transferring an embryo. What they do is that they get a little biopsy and catch a little culture of her uterus and send that to a lab, and magically somehow the lab can, the lab results can tell you if waiting 5 or 6 or 7 days with progesterone medications will be the right timing. It will tell you, which is pretty crazy. For example, if they did the test on day 5, sometimes the test will tell you, well, she really needed progesterone for 4 days, not 5 days. Or it will tell you, well, she needs an extra day of progesterone. Don't ask me, because I don't know how that magic happens, but it happens, right? So sometimes the fertility clinics and intended parents bypass that mock cycle. I do not recommend it, especially I just don't recommend it. I really recommend a mock cycle before the actual regular transfer. Once that surrogate gets to the fertility clinic, right? No, there's no baby dance involved whatsoever here either. Okay, so she lays down flat on the table, right? And they have an ultrasound ready. She has to come with a full bladder. The nurse first checks if her bladder is full. If not, they send her back to the waiting room. She drinks a little bit more, and then after a while, she goes back. It is very important for the surrogate to be responsible to show up at the right time. And this is one of the reasons why they do background checks and they do psychological evaluations, to make sure that she's in the right state of mind for everything. Because the embryo, they start thawing the embryo a little bit before you get there. This is especially if the surrogate travels. They have to make sure that this is synchronized very well, because this is a very, very, very expensive procedure. Okay, so once she lays flat on the table, the nurse comes around and checks, she makes sure again that the lining is nice and fluffy and thick enough, right? And then the fertility doctor comes into the room, right? Next to that little room is a little room where the embryologist is at. And there's like a little, there might be like a little window where the embryologist can see also what's happening. So the the reproductive endocrinologist grabs a catheter, which is trigger warning, just in case, which is to be inserted in the surrogate's uterus, all the way through her cervix and all the way up to the area where to the lining where they're going to implant the embryo or embryos. Okay, so the reproductive endocrinologist slowly inserts the catheter. It's a pretty long catheter. Slowly, making sure that there is no blockages, right? All the way in. And before I continue, they do also, before this whole thing starts, during the medical screening, the fertility doctors like to do mock transfers, which is they just insert a catheter just to make sure that there are no blockages. So they start getting to know your body well. Anyway, so they keep inserting it. They look at the monitor to make sure that they're going the right places. And then the little catheter makes it all the way to the lining of the uterus. And once everything is clear, the fertility doctor yells out to the embryologist, "All clear!" And then what they do is that they insert the embryo or embryos in the catheter, and somehow, I'm not sure how, they let those embryos or embryo slide all the way slowly. They're not visible as you cannot see with eye, but once it starts going into the vagina. The only thing that you can see in the monitor is like a little light, but it's not the embryo. It's actually the bubble that protects the embryo. So that's why you see a little light, because the embryo is actually too small to see. So you're gonna see the little light. And the fertility doctor asked the surrogate, do you see that? Yes. Okay, yes. So it keeps traveling until it gets to the lining. Let's pretend that this is the uterus. It gets to the lining, right? So he leaves it there for like a few seconds, to make sure. And then after that, he slowly takes it out, and then the embryologist, between the whole entire team and the embryologist, does the final say, in which, yeah, there is no embryos here that got stuck in the catheter, everything is good, it was all released, bam, that's it. And then after that, usually they'll leave the surrogate for like 10 minutes laying down, just to make sure that that she is relaxed enough, and gets some rest. And then after that, she can sit up for a while. The nurses usually tell the surrogates, don't bend like over too much, just relax and try to it's not like you have to be super meticulously careful, but it's just, for the time being. Now, after that, they let the surrogate empty her bladder, and after that, it's all done, the surrogate can go on with her day. Some clinics recommend bed rest for 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours, sometimes no bed rest, because a lot of clinics are actually transitioning into like, hey, just take it easy. Don't go crazy. Just act normal. Just don't go crazy. Don't do baby dances. Don't submerge into water. There's a few little requirements for that. Okay. So then after that, the surrogate still has to be on medication for a while. And she can usually stop the progesterone medications somewhere between 10 to 14 weeks after the transfer, yes. And, well, that's it. And then all the monitoring and all the care and everything goes on. Before, once all that happens, for the surrogates, there has to be a life insurance set up, because there are so many scenarios that could happen, right? And there's just some other little things that I have already talked about in my playlist that you can actually check that out, because I don't want to keep you guys here for too long, which I already have, so sorry about that. But I just wanted to explain to you how it all works, you guys. So thank you for hanging out with me here today. Don't forget to like if you found this video valuable. Don't forget to subscribe for more. Okay, thank you.